still have to sign up with the feedback.
Yeah, I don't know why they would have been turned
I did it.
turned
So I was
up.
doing the hello.
All right, let's call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You guys still hearing feedback?
I think it
Might be.
might be the door.
I'll adjust it a little
Should
more.
we just close the door?
Yeah, it was the door.
Because I don't think anybody's adjusted it.
I think it was the door.
I think it was the beats, the buzzer.
Yeah, it was the door.
Okay, all right, we're gonna get started.
We're good, I think. It's okay, Bob. I think it was the door.
No, I was hearing it.
Okay.
Voices in my head. I'm going insane. That's why I'm retiring from this.
All right, we'll do payroll first.
So this is back in the regular order. Katie Coppola, 20104. Shayla Gherkin is 5574. Mary Lyons Hall is 22008. Janice Weirs is 83828. Tiki Donis Wall, 72960. So hold on, James Weirs. Janice?
Janice, bottom, left.
Good to go. 83828 for Janice. Kiki Donis Wall, 72965. Caleb Smith is 2770. Marley Beltry is 9235. Kaden Blazik Ahern is 71140. Jeffrey Collins is 80239. Wayne Robinson 105684. Kip Kaiser is 83431.
41?
31.
What?
Typo.
So,
So if you just handwrite it, if you could just handwrite it on the timesheet.
83431. Thomas S., I can never say his last name, is 16161. Joyce Gallant is 83577. Jillian Benedicts is 63564. Karen Clement is 132618. Did you sign it?
me?
Yeah, just sign it anywhere if it hasn't been signed yet. For Karen's. Heather Haggett is 35937. Joyce Kegel is 59912. Tamara Peak is 79798. Daphne Wass is 84396. Joseph Bird is 111043. John Bryant is 73865. Keith Cullivan is 58970. Alyssa Sanuski is 333.15. Alexander Hall is 23566. Julie Labonte is 48503. Timothy Labonte is 26596. Barry Levine is 21240. Jeremy Potter is 26216. Nathan Richards 77914. Katrina Tennant 70865. Jack Tremblay is 76222. Trevor Whitby is 74522. Jason Gagnon is 16486. Andrew Gray is 67257. Kendra Brackett is 58129. Justin Doty is 117364. Robert Gagnon is 20637. Matt Kelly is 135245. Robert McCon is 150.63. Justin Moran is 1038. James Saltzman is 855.44. Christopher Spitaleri is 778.03. Josh Turner is 570.68. John Ventura is 1,499.50. Jared Brett Moore is 1,304.64. Jeremy Worcester is 331.53.
Total payroll, $28,999.79.
Thanks, John.
Affleck, 270.79. Airgas, 67.50. Amazon Capital, 215.96. AT&T Mobility, 1,107.93. Ben's Uniform, 2,053. Block 5 Tech is 3,530.69. Foundry Medical is $523.77. Casella Waste Systems, $31,076.22. Chapel Tractor is $42.99. East Coast Emergency Outfitters is $1,808.99. E&J Auto Parts $78.23. Eversource $2,601.90. Frank's Repair Service is $100 even. Teresa Frank is $70 even. Hartman Oils $2,421.54. Hartman Enterprises is $224. Impact Fire Services $118.50. Leaf is $137. McFarland Ford is $1,330.02. Mitchell Municipal Group is $5,088.08. Morton Salt is $4,858.24. Positive Promotions is $526.75. Quadient Finance is $1,010. Seacoast Mills Building is $27.18. State of New Hampshire is $3,514.68. Tech Inc. is $150. Ultram Automotive Repair is $583.50. UniFirst Corp. is $63.40. Valak is $211.45. WB Mason is $236.05, and Daphne Wass is $120.
Total AP $64,168.36.
There is, salt.
Looks like we had 53 hours of overtime in PD. I don't know if that was related to anything in particular.
Expensive.
Yeah,
I
not
never
sure.
knew
I know they had something with the driveway.
Driveway.
Would be details that would be,
It would be in our way.
When did Justin leave?
Justin left Saturday, but he was at drill last week, so that would have been part of it.
Part of it, okay. Fire had 4, highway had 0. You all set? Got everything?
Yes.
Okay, and the rec manifest is in the consent agenda. Wasn't even folded, so you can.
So,
Does she need that or not?
yes, I do.
Let's just take a motion to approve that, and then we can hand that down to her.
Motion for consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. Thank you.
Perfect.
Joyce,
Thanks.
could you just leave me a photocopy of that, please?
Excuse me?
Could you just leave me a photocopy of that?
Of this? Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Thanks.
Happy Halloween.
You too. Do we have any prepared documents?
No.
Nope. Any mail that anyone wanted to go over? Okay. And I know you wanted Jillian to go first, because she's been here some late nights for budgeting. One of the things that we have on our notes to discuss tonight is kind of a follow-up discussion to cost of living increases. Did you want to have that discussion first, as it impacts potentially some of the budgets that are up? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay. So this is an issue that I asked to bring back around to the board from, particularly from last week, when we had talked about COLA, cost of living increase, and sort of how that worked and how employee compensation is managed in the town. And so I had a conversation with Karen about how employee compensation is currently being managed and some differences in the years past, how it's been modified, how some changes were made about 2 years ago for fire and police, but how we do not have any uniform employee compensation policies at all for all town employees, which to me, I think is a problem for transparency, for equity, for fairness, because as we talked about last week, when people come to us with budgets, for, and ask for wage increases, there's no standard protocol that's standardized across the town for how that's done. And I know just coming from where I work, if there's a very, very published, standardized protocol for how wage increases are done. So I wanted to bring it up in front of the board. I know there's been different ways of doing it in the past, but wanted to sort of bring that forward to see if the board might be in favor of standardizing it in a transparent way for everybody across the town. And that would be all employees in all departments.
So like a
Um,
matrix, is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, so to me, it seems inequitable that fire has a current matrix that's based on skill level and education. PD has a matrix that's based on years worked, so you get an automatic raise when the year goes by. And the rest of the departments don't have any kind of matrix currently. So that feels just like not a uniform way to handle our employees. And so I would love to see something where either we decide as a group that we're gonna do a across-the-board cost of living increase for everyone that's the same, or reinstituting something that has a merit component. I mean, it's up to us how we wanna do it. I understand that it's been done both ways in town in the past, and that potentially there were some issues with the merit-based system before. I know where I work, there's both. So there's a market adjustment every year, which kind of encompasses like inflation and, basic market changes. And then there's a merit-based component where everybody gets the same review based on the same questions. And based on your score, you get a merit increase on top of whatever the market adjustment is. So I just feel like the way we're doing it right now is a little bit spits and spurts and not equalized across departments. And I think it would be much more transparent and equitable if we did it as sort of a town policy. Our current town employment policies really don't reference anything having to do with compensation or when you can expect a raise or how you can expect merit-based evaluation, that sort of thing. So just curious how people feel about that and if there's a desire to sort of try to standardize this moving forward.
So, the problem we found in the past is one board cannot encumber something for another board to handle. So, I can't tell an employee unless they're a union employee that next year that they're gonna get a step raise. And the town I currently work for is kind of looking at that to see if they can do a warrant article for the town to approve the pay matrix and then say, okay, that's a contract.
Sure.
But we can't encumber next year's board to say, you're gonna get a raise
Sure.
based on merit or performance or whatever. Unfortunately, it's a budget process every year.
Didn't we used to have some kind of a matrix?
We
Was
did.
Did that go in front of the voters?
No,
So how did that work?
it didn't. That's why we don't have it anymore.
Then can we fix that? Like, can we create something that will work so our employees know what's being done across the board?
I would be all for that. I don't know if we would have to check with legal to see if a voted on matrix is a contract that's binding.
How do we have the fire in the PD matrix then? Because that has an automatic step salary increase. Doesn't that do exactly what you just said we can't do?
No, because it's up to us to approve it. We can say no. We can say you have to cut that back, you have to change that. When the chief comes and presents his budget, if we don't like the way the steps are,
Yep.
we can say, no, you have
Sure.
to make it 1% in between
Sure.
steps.
Couldn't we do that for all town employees?
We could, but then you're not,
But it's on
that's
annual.
not what you're asking for, to guarantee an employee what they're gonna get.
I just think it should be transparent and clear when you work for us, when you're evaluated, how you get a pay raise.
I
Is it
agree.
based on inflation? Is it based on your performance? Is it both? Because right now it's super murky and I think that just breeds just a feeling of inequity and unfairness.
For years, it was like, I remember being on the budget committee, it was like COLA. Everyone gets.
Right, sure.
And then we went to
That's one
kind
way
of
to
a
do it.
merit, and then we had kind of a hybrid.
Yep.
And we went back to COLA, and we went back to merit.
But it's annualized,
Yeah.
so every year it has to be approved.
Every year, the board would just decide how they were gonna do it that year. Is that sort of what you're
Yeah,
saying?
And exactly,
you
and then
can't
when we
bind
would
to
look at the
future board.
budgets,
I
we
get
would
that.
say, because let's face it, you're gonna have some employees that do great and some that don't.
Sure.
So that's where your merit comes in, and then, when they were doing just the COLAs, we were like, well, we know that we had some personnel issues over here, so why am I just automatically giving that person this much?
Sure.
So that's when we went back to merit-based.
And then last year, we did the readjustment because everything was so far out of whack.
Because we were
Like,
behind the other towns.
Not
right?
only behind, but the
And and COVID and everything.
Unemployment skyrocketed, so nobody could find help, so we were paying employees less money than they could go make at McDonald's or
Sure.
Walmart.
Do you know of any towns, any other towns that work on a different type of system than we have? Like this, similar to this?
Where it's so arbitrary, like Fremont will do a COLA only, they don't do merit increases.
And every year they just agree, they just vote COLA.
COLA,
Okay.
like COLA across the board, they don't.
COLA set by
The
Social
board.
Security or by the board? The
I
board
don't
picks them up.
know- I don't know how they come to their number, this year they're going with 5%, so it's not.
That's a super
it's not
simple
a-
way to do it,
I
but
know
it doesn't reflect any merit if
The
that's what you want to
private
do.
market, I know that's what most companies right now are doing, is just a flat 5%.
Right.
Everyone's getting, the problem is I'm not recognizing employees for
Right.
going above and beyond, or
That's-
doing exceptional work. So I think that's why before we did COLA and kind of a merit hybrid where, well, yeah, I would give you 5%, but you really aren't producing, so maybe I give them 4, and then I figure out where I'm gonna be doing.
Well, and I think
But I
you
don't know
need
if you were
to,
here for my famous pixie dust comment, but
Yeah, I
all
remember
the,
that.
all the evaluations came in at
Yeah, they were all
exceptional
perfect,
employees.
yes.
yeah, that won't work.
And we were like, not everyone's great.
Right.
You're gonna have,
The
sometime,
way, so the
today you're
way
the pie,
Exeter
next time
Hospital
you're
does
the
it,
crust.
where I work, is everybody gets the same performance evaluation, even the physicians, although we're on a different model. And it's broken up into 6 groups, so lowest performing, and then it goes up, 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 up. If you're in the lowest performing group, you get a 0% merit raise, and then it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it changes, this is set every year by the company, so it depends on the market and unemployment and profit and law, everything, right? So they set this every year. And so that's more complicated. I mean, we could do that. I'm a little bit opposed to the idea that you would set COLA and then you would take people down from COLA, because COLA is supposed to be, this is what I need to pay you so you stay the same, right? So that you don't feel like you got a pay cut from last year. And of course, this year with inflation, it's crazy, right? So Social Security COLA is 8.7%. So anybody who's on Social Security, when they get their checks in 2023, they're going up almost 9%. That's unprecedented. But, most places generally have wage increases of 2 or 3% a year, just regardless, not dependent on what's happening with the economy, because that's kind of, the standard. So I guess I'm just looking to just equalize it. Like, I don't like the idea that individual departments would have to come to us and say, well, I think this person should get a 7.2% raise and this person should get 5% without the process. Like, that ends up being like maybe favoritism or just unfairness, and I don't think that's the kind of professional look we want to put out.
It worked out really well when you used to have, Karen would get these folders, we'd come in here, we'd review through all the performance reviews, and then we'd have to sign them. It worked out really well to understand where they were going, but like Andy said, they had the, everyone's match.
Well, and we've struggled with that, right? So we joke that there's certain employees that when you do your self-eval, they're like 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. They're like the best, right? And so you kind of laugh when you see it. But a big part of the thing that we had to do is manager training. This is what's a 3. This is what's a 4. This is what's a 5. Just because you like the person and they show up on time, they're not a 5. That's a 3. That's you do what you're expected. So I talked to Karen, and Karen felt that we have a good management team right now, that if we wanted to do some component of merit, that I don't want to speak for you, but you felt pretty confident that we could kind of standardize how to do evaluations. If you want to stay out of this merit murkiness, you just do COLA, but then you can't reward your really high performing employees and try to get them to stay. So.
My other concern is like Fremont, I know when we did the price comparisons or wage surveys, I think sometimes they end up falling behind if all they're doing is COLA, because they're not
Right.
recognizing it, like
Right.
you're saying, so.
Yeah, I think a lot of the staff, like in my company this year, are probably gonna get upwards of 10+% raises, because they've gotten market adjustments, step raises, because of unemployment, and then they're gonna get their regular merit raises in December. So I know there are people whose wages have gone up significantly just because of the environment that we live in and how low unemployment is right now.
And they're about to get hit with.
And I'm not saying we should raise everybody in our
Yeah.
town 10%.
Right.
I'm just saying, I think we should do the same thing for everybody, and there shouldn't be any ifs, ands, or buts, because then it's just all above board. And imagine how much easier this would make budget season. right? Because at least that line item, it would just be like, we already decided, boom, boom, boom. It wouldn't be like, well, this is this percent, this fight. Like, you don't need to fight about it, you don't need to negotiate it, you just said it. And I think it would take the drama out of it and just keep it above board.
Yeah, the only issue is then you have to go to the budget committee to sell whatever you,
Unless
But I
you
think
put it in
if
front of the
there's
voters,
if
you're
it's
saying.
consistent, right?
If it's a consistent thing, then it's easier to sell than 7% here, 2% here,
Right.
3% over here.
You know, that's why I typically, and I've talked to Karen about this before, is I like to look at like, what's the, like, where do we wanna see budgets coming in, right? So I'd much rather reward the employees, so like if I say, well, I'm not gonna need this much over here this time, so maybe I say the whole budget goes up 5%, but if the employees are going up 10% for wage adjustments or something like that, then I've offset that, I've balanced the
Sure.
work, so, or balanced the budgeting.
Yep.
That's
And-
ideally how I looked at it when I did the budget committee for years.
Totally. And the other thing I wanted to throw out there, because of just exactly what you just said, is these numbers are not typical, right? So usually your social security is not giving you an 8, they're giving you like a 5.
Mhm.
And so,
If you're lucky.
right,
I think it's
I
been at
think
2 or 3.
the year before was 5.9, traditionally 3-ish, right, in a non-strange world that we're living in. So part of what I was thinking is, I think our employees, deserve to get a raise that reflects inflation, just like in all, areas that they do. And we have ARPA funds that we have previously said we would use to offset fire. And we were anticipating using it this year. I don't know if we used any of it, or we anticipate using some of it,
We
but
will use some of it, but we will not use
we will
all
not
of it.
use what we had earmarked to use this year. So should we kind of rethink our thinking in terms of, it's a sunk cost, right? An ARPA dollar's an ARPA dollar, that's just one for one. Should we think about the fact that we're probably gonna have to give raises a little bit bigger than typical this year? And should we offset that with ARPA to try to keep our budget as flat as possible, knowing that this is a unique, global, partly COVID-related situation that we're in, because we have those funds to offset?
Can we offset anything besides police and fire, or is it only emergency?
You can use it for
anything.
anything that is in your regular general operating budget.
You can just put it in as revenue.
And how much do we have after fire?
Well, after that first commitment, I think you'll end up spending like 120,000 of that money. So you'll
How
have,
much do we have left?
you had
We have a lot.
472?
472,000.
We have enough to
and we have
cover
until 20,
these raises.
25?
But we said we were gonna stagger the fire.
Right, so that we
Right.
can justify this, the
Right.
staff.
So
Right, so
there wasn't a full blow to the taxpayer for
Right.
the.
So that was just one thought, because I know this is unprecedented, and these numbers are unprecedented. So even if we just decide to do a straight COLA, and we set it at 6 or 7%, which would even be below Social Security, that's a big number to try to sell to the town, and the town is not gonna be thrilled about it, I get it, so that's exactly what those ARPA funds were kind of intended, to cover some of the fallout from the pandemic, which I would argue this partly is. So just throwing it out there that could soften the impact on taxpayers for this year, if we do wanna, make sure we're doing sufficient, wage increases.
So like do a 5% COLA and then a 1 to 2%. And then I wonder if the ARPA, we could do the 1 to 2%, or even kind of split that in half. So you do 3 under ARPA.
I mean, I think you can use as much of the ARPA as you want, right? You just have to transfer it into your revenue.
Yeah, so it's sitting in deferred revenue right now, so we just have to move it.
So that would be up to us, whether we wanna look at our end budget, final bottom line number, and see how much it diverges from last year. I mean, some stuff is coming in under budget, so I don't have a good sense in my head of how off we're gonna be from last year's budget. But we could decide to cover that whole delta with ARPA and present at town meeting that our budget is neutral from year prior.
Right. The only thing that's gonna hit you is next year, because it compounds. 'cause
Well,
it's salaries.
inflation is predicted to settle a bit, so I don't think we're gonna have another 8% year, hopefully, knock wood, everybody knock wood, but we don't know, right? So that's just a thought, because I understand that these numbers are problematic from a bottom line perspective.
What are your thoughts?
I'm good with that. I mean, in the end, we just need to pay our employees a comparable wage
Yep.
for a day's work, so.
Yep.
However we get there, it doesn't really matter.
As long as we balance the budget.
Right.
Right.
As long as we balance employee retention with the needs of the taxpayers.
And we still don't have anything from the DRA on the tax rate, right?
No, they're still waiting for the DOE to approve the apportionment of the SAU. And so once that's complete, all of our documents are in between the co-op, the Swayze, and us, so we're just waiting for them.
Yep.
So hopefully.
But of
that'll
course,
be
we have no
next week.
control over those numbers.
Right. It just kind of helps to know, kind of
Yep.
like, okay, well, $400,000 house, this is what you're.
Yep.
Who knows
Well, I
what
mean,
we're
we
gonna
knew
come
at the end of
Yeah.
town meeting minus whatever
Right.
we had in unreserved fund balance that's gonna
Right.
offset that.
And the last 2 years, you've put in quite a bit of money in overlay for abatements, and those have all settled, and we've paid out all of those settlement payments, so that's all done.
And then we have the extra bridge and highway money.
Yep.
Do we need to have a public hearing to accept them?
We will, I was waiting for the bridge money to come in, once I
Okay.
have a firm number for that, I thought you could do
So
one
that'll
public
give us-
hearing for all three.
That's a $100,000 buffer. That will help some of this,
Right.
Plus, because it was 102 just for the highway money, then you'll get the bridge allotment,
which I think was like another 100,
which is
wasn't it?
another 100, yep.
So my suggestion would be, there's no way we're implementing any kind of merit-based system this year, right? Because that has to be like started from the beginning of the year and be
A
ongoing.
lot of work on that.
So for consistency, as we're going through these budgets, I would suggest that this board tonight agree on a COLA and apply it to every employee across the board for transparency, consistency. I do not think individual departments should be negotiating, COLA is what it is, cost of living. It shouldn't really be negotiable, I don't think. I mean, if you have an employee that you feel is not performing, that's a separate issue that should be dealt with. And if you don't have a merit-based system, I don't think that should be addressed by COLA, because COLA is, what it says it is, cost of living adjustment. It is not merit-based.
So the COLA, except for the fire and the PD, because they have matrix, right? Is that how you're
Which
doing it?
I think is problematic. I don't understand why certain departments in town would have a different pay structure than other employees.
Police got they got a COLA escalator plus their step, was what was approved for the 22 budget, so their steps are 2.5% built into PD.
So they already have a COLA that's built into it?
So that would be the adjustment for the step one, and then all of the rates get adjusted accordingly.
So there's a capture for it, and then a step increase just for
Years of service.
timeframe, years of service. in that
But then
budget.
fire is different,
House fire?
right?
Fire is based off of certifications, so based off of increased certifications, you get a higher wage, but there isn't an actual step that says how it will increase years over years without obtaining further certifications.
So is there a COLA built in there, or no?
No, so theirs is, they have the basic framework for their step one, but then they don't have any future steps. So Joe's working on sort of expanding that going forward and looking at different union contracts and what our neighboring towns are doing to base his budget for this year.
So basically, fire is based off of whether you're a firefighter or a firefighter paramedic.
Right.
Obviously, your paramedic's gonna give you
Yeah.
more money.
Right, there's multiple certifications
Right.
listed that would bump you up, but nothing, to me, it just doesn't make sense that like fire and PD would be different, and then
Well,
those
Fire
would
and
be.
PD would be different because fire would be kinda like, so if you're a firefighter paramedic, you're kinda like maybe a sergeant, or it's kind of a, expanded job performance.
Sure,
Whereas, PD really doesn't have that added, unless you went in for, education incentives or something like that. Basically, the fire is an education incentive because they're boosting up what they can do for the fire department.
but why would PD have a step based on years of service and fire wouldn't?
Because that's what the police chief did years ago was.
Right,
to
so
try
that's
to
what I'm
get
saying,
them
it
in
feels
line.
like, a little kind of scattershot, and that it should really be as standardized as possible, with any exceptions that like need to, if you're a sergeant and that's different, then maybe you're at a different place if we do make a matrix at some point.
Did you have an audience question? You do have an audience
We
question.
have public comment at the end. If we were going to do something like, can you talk a little bit more about what could go in front of the voters? So that we weren't
I
deciding
don't know
this
yet,
every
we
year.
would have to
We'd have to check and see
check with council and see
what
if-
was even, possible. And I'm not necessarily arguing that we have to do that. I think just if we can, for this budget season, just agree on a kind of
Cool.
a COLA
Um,
as much as possible, I think that would make sense.
Department heads are still doing reviews though, aren't they?
We're working on all of our reviews now, so self-evaluations have all been complete, and then they're working on meeting with their employees to complete that second
So
phase.
if you wanted to put a merit-based in there of a 1 or 2% based on a review, you could still do that.
You could, I think it's just, there's no standardized process, right? The reviews aren't done in a standardized way, there's no standardized chart for how you would do a reward,
Right,
right?
so there's nothing that defines that if you score between this and this
Yeah.
point, that you would earn whichever point on.
Yeah.
But it's a standardized review form, every employee gets the same review form.
So we could decide to make, I just think you've gotta make it transparent and not subjective up to each department head. That doesn't seem like the right way to do it to me.
I mean, for me, and you wanna come up with a magic number, I would say do 5% across the board, kinda like what Fremont's doing, and then I would say, looking at salaries, let's do a 6% overall. So that way there's a 1%, knowing that some employees are probably gonna get 2, and then you might have some that are really bad, and they're gonna get 0, but they're still gonna get the 5%. Is a COLA. So you do a COLA of 5%, and then we just say overall, I'm only looking for 6%, because I know some are gonna exceed, and some are gonna fall here, so on average, it should be at a 1, knowing that I got 5% minimally, and then I have a 1% buffer, basically.
You said the trustees of the trust funds weigh in on this as well?
They came in at 5.2 for a COLA, and then Social Security was 8.7.
Okay, so that's the Brentwood town trustees come up with that
Yes.
number.
And so some towns, I mean, then, like Bow is doing a 5% COLA and a 2.5% merit increase,
Up to 2.5%?
up to 2.5%. It's not guaranteed, so everyone gets the 5%, and then they're doing, the 2.5% is based
So
off
you
of
could
merit.
even do that, you could say 5% and then 2. I
Do
think
you
7 is a
feel-
big pill.
Yeah, well, we've already approved a couple of 7% increases. Do you feel your department heads would be comfortable with with the reviews that they've already done, being able to separate people out for a 0, 1, 2? That's what you're suggesting, right? Sort of a 0, 1, 2 step?
I think so, but I don't foresee anyone receiving 0, because I think I guess that's performance review, but I think the folks receiving 0 would be those folks, if we had any, that would be on a performance improvement
Sure.
plan. So those are folks
Hopefully.
that would already know where their status is at, right? Like a performance review shouldn't be a surprise,
Yep.
whether you're a good performer or you're not.
Yeah, we had that.
Everything in there
we've
should
had
just
that
be
before.
reviewing everything you've already talked about over that last year.
Yep.
But standardizing it, I think, would help us through budget season, coming before this board and also going before the budget committee. It also eliminates sort of that backbiting where one department gets something and then the following year, fire comes in and says, oh, they got this, look, I want
I
that
want
too.
that too.
Mhm. If we decided to do like a 5 or 5.2 COLA and then a 0, 1, or 2 merit, how would that overlay with PD and FD that already have that system? We would just make sure that they hit those numbers as well?
Right, so we would just adjust the COLA escalator so that the rest of the steps would fall in line to wherever they,
And do their chiefs do the same sort of evaluation process as the other town employees? Or do they have their own?
police has their own form.
Okay.
But fire uses the same form that the rest of
And
the
do you-
employees use.
But fire really doesn't have an escalator, they have, like, the firefighter paramedics making this,
Yep.
there's nothing built in to say they get a 2%, 3% raise every year.
Right.
So the only issue would be PD, and they would have to change their matrix to go along.
To just match what we were doing for the town
Right.
across the board?
And historically, the fire department only does performance reviews on full-time employees and the officers. They do it on the volunteer staff.
Okay.
Realistically, do we have enough scale, like, are we big enough to implement a merit-based system that would not just be like everyone, pixie dust situation?
Well, you have those employees that come in and do what they're supposed to do, and
That's
that's it, that's a 3. you have those employees that do a little bit more, then you have those employees that are basically
Above and
on
beyond.
call all of the time, and those would be your fives.
Okay.
So I think you have those outliers where you have, I think we have a solid staff where everyone performs well, but I think you do also have those
So it's
employees that
generally, if you have a 0, 1, or 2 percent system,
you'd be on a performance
generally
improvement.
people are gonna be getting 1%. If they're coming in, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, is that what the idea is? And then the
If you look
outstanding
at
employees?
how the hospital does it, so if it's on a 5-point scale, if you averaged around a 3, you get a 2% raise. If you get up to above 4, it goes up into the 4%. But that's just how this one is done, and the hospital doesn't have as significant of a COLA. They do what's called a market review. So the bulk of your reward is actually the merit, and a smaller percentage is market adjustment. So they basically have a typical performing employee at 2 to 3, and then a high performing employee at 4 to 5. But like I said, it's weighted towards merit in this system. That's just how one place does it. Which I think would be hard for us to do, given that we're small and this is thousands of employees. So it's a lot easier, I think.
Yeah, and they probably have actuarial people that
Yeah.
are actually going through going,
Sure, yeah.
we don't have staff to do an actuarial
Yeah.
report or review.
So what if you score a 3, then you get between a 1 to 1.4% merit. A 4 to a 4.5, you get a 1.4 to 1.9% merit. And then a 4.6 to a 5, you get 2 to 2.5% merit. Or something like that. If you score less than a 3, you don't get a merit increase, you get just the COLA.
And then overall, I think that would work out to probably
Around
1.75 or something on top of it. So if you do a 5.2 COLA, and then you do, let's say, 1.75 average, that's gonna.
Getting
right,
around
yeah.
7-ish,
67.
which is what we were kind of anticipating, I think. Lower than Social Security,
But palatable that,
but palatable
And
and reflective of the inflationary situation that we're unfortunately in and all our employees live in.
it's gonna address our current climate that we're in.
And that's why I think we should think about ARPA, because ARPA was meant to address your current climate, and this is a unique, and I don't think increases will be as significant.
And
Next year.
overall, do you think that would come in and, like, knowing the budgets, do you think that's gonna be like 20 to 30,000 overall budget impact?
The 7%?
If I did that amongst all the employees, right, let's just say 7%, what would be the total dollars approximately?
Average payroll.
Like, you can take what our average payroll is
Yeah,
times
that's
per
what she's
week
trying to do.
times 52 plus 7%. That's just how my mind works, but
So it would be about 86.
86,000, and how much do we have in ARPA left? That we
Well,
could
we've
use?
only spent like a few $100s so far.
We have 400 something thousand,
We have 472,000.
So we could
So
use
you could
ARPA.
absorb that.
so we could
easily.
cover it 100%.
What is, just,
So that was
It-
based off of an average payroll of 40,000. So some weeks are higher or lower depending on overtime.
86K increase, what is, if ARPA didn't exist, what's the overall tax impact of that for a, whatever,
12
100,000?
cents.
12 cents per thousand? And for, okay,
So,
And how many years do we have to use ARPA?
It has to be committed by the end of 24 and spent by 26.
Okay, so we have 23, so we have a couple more budget years to use the ARPA.
hate when my calculator doesn't work.
So it could potentially cover some of this wage volatility for upcoming budget seasons as well,
So $480.
in addition to helping cover fire.
Yeah, so about $480 on 400,000.
But that's assuming that you don't have increases in revenue, right? So you also have your extra bridging money, and so those things would
Yep.
offset your tax
Yeah, we might be,
impact as well.
it might not be as
yeah,
bad
I
as
was
we think.
I just wanted to get a
Right,
rough.
so apples to apples,
Yeah.
that's what it
The
would
We
be.
know we have Oxford, the worst case scenario,
It's 12 cents.
knowing as right now.
I mean, even separate from this wage issue, I would just like to float to the board that we use ARPA to keep our budget neutral from last year if we can. Because, I mean, to me, that's sort of the intentionality of ARPA, was to help you get through the COVID and the COVID recovery period.
I agree with that. As
So,
long as we
to
have
me, that's
funds
kind of a
there, so
no-brainer.
it's fine,
But this will just be an impact in that.
yeah. Because I think we have until 2026 to spend all that. so
Correct.
We have to spend it anyway, so
Yep.
use it or lose it, right? So. I'd be fine with that.
As long as you feel that that merit is doable and is not gonna stress out or cause any budgetary difficulties for your department heads between now and December. Because we could just do a flat COLA if that feels too complicated to throw together quickly.
I think if the goal is to retain our employees and we can manage to roll this out and we can do it uniformly across the board and make it fair across all of the employees, I'm all for it. I'll find the money. I'll make it work.
How does it work, and I'm just curious, because you mentioned Fremont only does the COLA.
Which is also why they're always,
Are they losing
they
employees?
drag down our averages always.
So they tend to be lower on the pay because they're only doing COLA only.
And they've never done a merit-based system,
Ever.
according to Heidi.
And do they set their COLA based on whatever their trustees pick or their stuff?
I'm not sure how they pick it, because they just chose 5%, so it's not I think it's just a board.
So it's not even really a
discretionary
COLA,
number.
it's just like a flat,
A
you know,
flat across the
increase that
board.
they do.
Yeah, so I guess we shouldn't be using them as a pinpoint to see where we are usually, because we're
Right.
not doing it that way.
Yeah,
Do we know that it absolutely is okay to use that money, ARPA for that? We do. And I think we kind of talked about it, but the idea of using that money to ensure that we have a flat budget, is that what you said? Despite the increases, is not gonna put us in a situation where after the ARPA money's gone, that we're, in a much different situation where,
I mean, the only thing it's gonna do is if you give your employees a 7% raise, then you have that on the books for upcoming years. So if you use ARPA to backfill some of that for the next 3 or 4 years, once that ARPA runs out, you're gonna feel the impact of those higher wages. But, wages go up anyways. Hopefully, we're not gonna see this 7-8% persistently, and it's gonna go back to 3-ish or whatever. But, you're gonna feel the fact that we bumped people a step, and you're not gonna go backwards. So that is gonna be your sort of long-term impact. But it seems to me that, inflation is impacting all of the taxpayers, not just our employees. So if there was a time to use ARPA to not increase taxes, to me, this is the time to do that, especially if it would be a relatively small amount of our 400-something thousand that we have just sitting there for this purpose. It was specific at first, right? And then they changed the legislation to allow you to use it for any municipal need, which is nice, because then you can just put it in your fund.
yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I am in favor of trying to make sure that we're paying people a reasonable salary or, hourly wage, what have you. This idea that public employees should have to sacrifice to the nth degree, and all that is, I think, we've got to get past that and value our employees. So I just wanted to understand the long-range thinking on that. I mean, anytime I hear about a pot of money,
It's finite, yeah, it has an end.
That's all. It's just when you're like, okay, we have this pot of money, let's use it, and then, naturally, but again, I think a few of you did address it, and that at some point you are, gonna have to pay it without that pot of money. But we're talking about a couple of years from now, I suppose, future boards are going to be able to adjust, COLA's gonna be different, I guess, right?
I mean, we're always gonna
Saying?
have to make sure we're paying approximately market rate,
Right,
or else we're gonna hemorrhage employees.
right.
So that's
And
gonna
the
go
cost
on.
of replacing employees and recruiting and retraining, all that stuff costs money. So,
And then we, hopefully energy comes back down a little.
Yeah, right,
Because right now,
the economic burden on the taxpayers theoretically should get better.
we got really.
Inflation should get better. If you look at the worldwide predictions, it's predicted to get better over the next 2 years. So I do think some of this will get better, but right now, we're stuck with what we've got.
So where are we then in this conversation? Are we?
I think we need to take a vote and decide what we're gonna do for this budget season, and then make sure it applies to all of the budgets, both the ones we've done tonight, and, I think there was only maybe one or two salary
Just cemetery so far.
cemetery, which came out at
7.5%.
7.5%. So just to make sure that those all kind of fall under what we're agreeing on tonight.
I'll make a motion that we approve a 5% COLA up to 2.5% merit.
Can we have public comment first?
Public comment will be at the end of the meeting when we're done with our meeting.
Second.
So when the COLA's zero, you're gonna go up the COLA's at zero.
Liz, you're welcome to stay to the end and comment during public comment.
This is not transparent.
So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry that delayed you, but we kind of had to do that first
And are we
before we
gonna,
could do budget.
And,
Do we want to make a separate motion
For the
to
ARPA?
use ARPA?
yeah, that's, I make a motion for the ARPA.
Second.
All in favor of using ARPA to cover any budget deficit to keep our budget neutral from last year?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, guys. I think it's a good step forward to just make stuff totally above board and the same, and I think it'll reduce stress on a lot of people.
And just so I'm clear, the budget neutral is beyond wages, it's to encompass all,
I think we're just talking
As much as
about,
we can.
we're just talking about payroll right now,
okay.
that was my understanding.
Yeah, yeah, for the 86,000.
We can see how the rest of the budget comes out. We could always vote on that separately if the budget was gonna come out with a hole in it. All right, now we will turn to Jillian's budget. Come on up. We wanna try to get her out of here. Thank you. Hello.
Hello. So we'll talk about the planning board first. I have some 2022 updates, and then Jillian will get into the details for 2023. The first thing I wanted to say is we already had a budget estimate based on not what you guys just talked about.
Yes, correct.
And I'll just tell you my feeling on it, take it or leave it. I think people working this year didn't start out having that measuring stick. I mean, I think if you implement it in January and say, okay, after a year, we're gonna give you a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then we'll do it, I think that's fair, but I feel like this is kind of after the fact, after people have worked for however many months. And I'm all for having something consistent and having a system in place, for sure. But I think
I agree. I
it's a
think it's
little late in
not,
the game this
I think
year.
it's not optimal, and we could have done COLA only, but I think that Karen feels that this is doable and that we will make it work. And then moving forward, if we decide to do this again next year, it will be more comfortable to people.
And COLA won't start, or the raises don't start until 13 weeks in to the year too, so.
True.
In reality, it's not like they're starting January 1st, they actually have to wait until after our town meeting
Yeah.
before they even get
Yeah.
an increase.
No, I'm just saying for the part that's merit-based,
Yeah, it is a
they
little,
didn't know that they were
late
gonna
in
be
the game.
rated.
But an employee should always perform
The
at their
employee
best.
should always be doing their best,
Yeah.
but you don't know what you're being measured against if you don't have, like, I had very specific goals for myself at the beginning of the year for my job. So now I know exactly what a 3, 4, and a 5 is against that.
Yeah.
People won't.
I think
know
that's
that.
part of the, I mean,
I know, but at
we're
some point you
moving
could change
toward
it.
that direction so
yeah.
that there is a better understanding and transparency.
So we might have to rework this a little bit. So for 2022, we have extra money in the budget, I shouldn't say extra, but we will have money remaining in the budget for 2 reasons. One is we had a gap in staff for several weeks.
Yep.
So there was some salary, and then we only did 1 chapter this year for the master plan, or we're only working on 1. We had a discussion at last week's meeting about the plan to bring Plan New Hampshire to the town to do a community engagement process to talk about future plans for the rec center. And so we voted to provide half the funding for that, using the funds that, we didn't use this year for that chapter. I think that we'll still probably have some surplus that'll go back into the,
Is that the project you had talked about, John?
Mhm.
So it's about like $3,000-ish dollars?
so it's $3,500 for the process. They also need money for, room and board.
Room and board
For a couple days.
if it's gonna be a variable cost based on how local some of the professionals are.
Gotcha.
We're hoping the rec board will reconsider and put in some of that money.
Okay.
So that it's split 3 ways. So that's 2022, and I'll turn over to Jillian to talk through 2023. Knowing the first line, it was salary, and it was what we had planned, but I guess we'll talk about
Yeah,
it.
I can adjust that.
Do you know off the top of your head how this salary increase would jive with what we just talked about?
Well, so it was in here for starting April 1st, a 7.5% increase
Yeah, just kind of what we were hearing. Okay.
relative cost of living.
Which actually did bring that line down, only by $26, but it did bring it down. The next line was FICA and Medicare, which would also have to be adjusted if that first line's adjusted. And that went up $225. New Hampshire retirement also went up, $284 to $6,666. A lot was level funded. Glenn did ask for an increase of 1%, which is $334. He has not had an increase since 2019. So.
What line is that on?
Circuit rider?
Circuit rider.
$395.
Gotcha.
But you have it as level funded right now?
No,
No,
it
she
went
built it
from
in.
It's
33,390
It's
to
just a smidge.
Yeah, the long range is, circuit rider long range is level funded.
And that's the master plan chapters,
Okay.
Yep.
The long range?
the long range.
I'm concerned about your legal, just because I know we got some stuff coming up. And I don't know, and I touched base with John about this too, and I talked to Karen a little earlier. How much money do you think is gonna be left in this budget at the end of the year? Because then maybe we can encumber it, to put it into legal? Because if you have one incident, which
They're
is gonna
already
happen,
over.
you guys are gonna hit 10K just in that one incident.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know that I can encumber at least
Which
10,000.
legal costs end up under planning board budget versus under our town legal budget, which we just recently increased significantly?
Right, which we are hoping that will be enough for what we have
Sure.
going on.
So-
So their legal would be if the planning board gets sued over their decision.
Gotcha, okay.
Our legal is.
All the
enforcement.
enforcement stuff is under us, so this would just be to, protective for the planning board. Gotcha, okay.
We did bring him in this year to give us some advice on some, just some, not specific to a project, but how to make some decisions. And then had him review a number of things, and the decision was made early on that it wouldn't be proper for the applicant to pay for it. And there was a lot, we had to go back to him a few times.
So this $2,000 was all
That's
that,
why it's a
like,
little bit
legal
over this year.
assistance for the
Yeah.
board itself? Okay.
Yeah.
This was printed off September 8th, so I'm assuming that this year's actual number is more than,
It's higher.
do you know how much more?
For legal, or?
For
Total.
legal, I think the last bill was $570 or
Ah,
something like that.
I'm looking at,
Yeah, it was already over
I'm
and,
just looking at the 52,148 based
Oh.
on September 8th, but you're total, so see how you're like less
Yeah.
than 50%? I'm just wondering how close you are to get to Bob's,
Yeah.
Concern
Do you want me
of-
to run it?
how much do we
how much
have?
wiggle room is in there?
Do you want me to run an updated budget right now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
my concern is I just wanna make sure that we can encumber enough
Enough?
to make sure that I have probably 10K available for legal.
I mean, we should, right, because we're in
Yeah,
September here, we're at less than 50%, but we're at, what, 70%
Yeah,
of
I
71.
think you'll have 10K in the
I
waste
think you
line.
will, I think
Yeah.
you will.
and if we can, then I'd say we probably should encumber that 10K
10K
just to
from-
make sure. I'd keep this at 2,400, but I know I want that $10,000 buffer
From,
just in case.
and we can do that from wages, yeah. Okay.
And then can we carry that from year to year if we don't
No.
need it?
No, we can only do it this year.
Well,
Every year we have to
If you have
encumber.
10,000 left over
Right,
next
that's
year,
what I
we
mean.
can,
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
then what's gonna happen is if you have 10,000 next year, I can guarantee the budget committee's gonna be like, hey, why don't we cut you by 10K?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can only do that so long before the appetite, before the apple kind of turns into the little shriveled apple head that people put on a stick.
and Kristen, the main cost savings is the circuit riders. Do we anticipate those going back up next year?
So the circuit rider long range, will stay the same for next year, we just didn't spend it all this year, and
Okay.
that's where we're gonna encumber some of that money for Plan New Hampshire, which I think is,
Yep.
you know, very consistent with how that money was gonna be spent.
Okay,
And then it's the salary, I think, where we have, money because
Gotcha.
of, the gap. Well, it'll be salary, FICA, and retirement.
this probably has to be tabled, we probably
I
have
was
to
doing
table
my,
this anyways.
Sounded like a whimper.
He was doing, no, he was doing Jeopardy music.
I'm like,
We
Andy's
probably,
not happy, he's gotta present it to the budget committee.
well, we probably have to table this anyways if they're gonna go back and adjust their wages and.
Well, if they were already at 7.5,
FICA and
if they were a factor anyway,
Yeah.
so we're already, it's a moot issue.
We can just
anyway,
decide
we
because
gotta
we just made that decision tonight, which they were not aware of, obviously.
Yeah, so it worked out that it's actually.
So the main thing would be how we're using leftover money, if we're able to put.
Here she comes.
some
That's-
legal-
I think you'll be fine. We've got 48,000 left. So 13,000 in the payroll line, 2,400 left in New Hampshire retirement, so those will presumably be depleted. Circuit rider, which is Glenn, is 25, so that's 40. So about 8, plus or minus whatever you have in overage, so I think we could get to the 10.
Okay, as long as I know we can,
So we
I
can,
feel more comfortable knowing we have 10 for legal.
we have 10 easy in salary that we can encumber, cause you said 13.
we only have 13, and you still have,
We only have 13 left for the rest of the year.
and we have 9 pay weeks.
Yes.
But you think.
Well, do you need to bump it all the way to 10 if it's right now at 2,000? Seems like a big jump.
So,
Well, he wants to have 10 in there, so
We know,
you need 10 just for that representation, not to whatever else they use during the year.
I can anticipate, based on information that we have at this time, I can anticipate
Sure.
there's gonna be probably about a $10,000 impact.
Gotcha.
So that's why I'm trying to think, if we can encumber this, then we don't have to throw it into the budget. It's an anomaly that we know we're gonna have, so.
So if we have 9 weeks left of payroll, plus New Hampshire retirement and Glenn's contract, we'll anticipate spending $35,000.
Out
So
of?
we've got 48 left. So
About
you've got
So we have
13 there.
13,000, yeah.
And then you
So we
still
have
have
10.
1,000 left in your ZBA budget, so we're right there to be able to encumber 10 for legal and then
And
3,500
3
for your Plan New Hampshire.
Okay.
Assuming you don't go crazy on office supplies between now and the end of the year.
Don't do it WPA's in order.
So crazy since I've been here.
So right now, you guys are looking for the 109,970?
Yes, yeah, because the only other increase was the Rockingham Planning Commission dues, which is population-based, so.
That's just
And
a
we are-
1% increase.
We are trying to take more advantage of that, we've got 2 people, I don't know if they've come to the board yet, but, Doug and Stephanie, we've all told to participate in, the RPC meeting, so that we can have our voice sort of hopefully get some more things for Brentwood.
Great.
So make a motion for the 109,970?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
And do I need, we can't do the encumber funds until later, or do I do
We
that
have to do it at the end of the year.
at the end of the year? Okay.
Okay,
So.
but that will be the
Karen, just if you
plan.
can notate that. Thanks.
And then, budget committee is not meeting Monday, so you'll,
Okay.
won't be.
So the encumbrance is 10 for legal?
We can't do it till the end.
No,
And-
no, but she's making those. So
That will
10
be
10 for legal
above and beyond the 2,400 that we just approved, so it'll be 12,400. Okay.
and 5 from the long range for, okay.
And we would need some type of contract for,
Working on it.
And if we can't get all the way to 5, we can ask the rec center to,
Help.
We're already asking the next one. Yeah, for sure.
um,
And what about so for legal, I know that we need a contract that, well, I guess we will have those questions answered by the end of the year.
when is FudCon?
I don't remember the date, but it's in November sometime.
Is it the,
November
It's the 21st for planning and zoning.
alright, so the
21st.
Monday the 21st? Are they Monday again, or are they Wednesday?
Monday.
At 6.
Okay, and this may not be the time, but, I haven't heard about the potential expenditure, legal expenditure.
Have not?
I have not,
It's not the time.
it's not,
That's
Yeah.
okay.
We'll talk later.
somebody could fill me in.
Non-public legal.
That's not public, so.
Do we wanna do the zoning board?
ZBA?
Yes.
Do we-
Level funded at 1401.
I'll make a motion for level funding at 1401.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Budget passes.
Good job.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Run, quick.
All right, who else do we have? FudCon and code enforcement?
I'll go do Kip.
All right, Kip.
Mr. Kip.
Evening all. So, when you look at my budget, I've got a description of what the items are, and I have listed out percentages as they work out per line. The big things here is an increase in electrical inspectors, excuse me, and plumbing inspections to be added this year, as we don't have a plumbing inspector except for myself. And as the number of permits have grown and the town has grown, there's not enough time to do all the inspections, so. And as you will note, if you're looking through revenues, year-to-date, we're from fees, we brought in about almost $79,000. So we're gonna supersede the cost total from last year. And that's kind of the way I'm basing the projection of permits and funding for next year for it. And I know we don't fund it directly, but the point is it's offsetting.
Do you have a rough projection of 2021's revenue
2021's revenue,
total? Yeah.
usually
It's in the town report, I can grab it.
Usually at budget committee, I bring in the past 5
It's
or
fine.
6
I can look up.
or
I
7
was
years.
just,
So, let's see, you know,
I'll go grab it.
it's on the revenue sheet last year's, I just cannot remember it. It was about 10,000, roughly 9 or 10,000 less, I think, last year.
9 or 10,000, so like roughly 68.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, someplace in around that range.
And do you have an idea of where we're gonna end up with this year? If we're already
I-
at 78?
My guess is, and you don't know, but it'd be around 90 in revenue.
So do you think that we were around 80, or do you think we were around 68? It doesn't matter. We're
I'll
gonna-
tell you that.
That's, I
better
think
to-
that's
better to
all, that's just fees for people who come in who need inspections.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and like what I do with the electrical inspections and I'll do with the plumbing is it basically comes out of the base fee that we have in general. And we have a base fee of 50, it's never less than that, because that's what it costs to process and do all, and send person at one time. Of course, a lot of these, you know, on a house, it takes a minimum of 3 electrical inspections. But the houses are a smaller percent from the overall. But pretty much if you get we're up to 360 applications so far this year, you know, with 9 more weeks to go. And you could divide it all out, you got an average, you're getting up into an average of 5, 6 inspections a day. It's actually more than that, because I'm part-time, so I only work 4 days. So yeah.
And we're signing 6 to 7 permits a week.
Yeah, we're signing a lot, I know.
I know, some weeks you got
Sometimes there's 12 in there.
12 or
Yeah,
17.
Sun run.
yeah.
And tonight we had
There was only like 4 or 5, yeah.
Kip issued 309 permits last year and collected $82,000, so he's already
Well, I was a little shy.
50 permits over where he was year-to-date last year, and his revenue is just right there, with 10 weeks left to go.
So the bigger jump we see is under 70%. The state voted in 2018 codes. They have to start in January. The books cost approximately $1,000. I'll have a little bit of money left from this year. The other stuff is the basic fees for staying with the ICC and the building associations.
It's kind of funny that you can pass a law, mandate that you follow them, and also tell them that they have to buy the book for $1,000.
For $1,000.
Oh, yeah.
Does that
Right.
include internet access to the books or digital access versus having the printed books?
If you buy the printed books, they're, depending on the book, the larger books are, I guess, about $15, $20 more than having the other access. So,
It's just, I look at everything,
well, we
internet-wise,
talked,
it's easy to search when I have to look for a code for plumbing.
Usually you
Yeah, and
still
we-
have to pay the fee and then they give you the books and the internet.
Yeah. Do they give you both, or do they have to pay
Suspect
for
that's what this
so,
is.
and you can buy it 1 month at a time, you can buy it a year at a time, or 5 years at a time.
it? Great deal, huh?
This is
5 years at a time.
So, well,
How's that
actually, it actually closes out at 3, it's supposed to change code every 3 years, but it doesn't always happen. We went 6 before.
So you do 5 years, it's a bad investment, you're under the water.
And Kip, just to clarify, the electrical and plumbing inspection lines, those are when we have to outsource inspections that can't be done by the town?
Well, basically, they're paid through the town, so it's just like you say, swapping out the fee. There are times that we may have to go to a third-party inspector.
Gotcha.
Typically, that would be on a fairly large job with a fairly costly permit fee.
Gotcha. And that would just be factored in here.
It's kind of like a little bit of a buffer.
So can I reword that question? Is that $4,200 going to you or a different person?
Different person.
That's kind of what I was asking. Yeah.
That's what she was asking and.
It's
I'm
outsourced.
sorry.
Are we at
Yes,
least,
I'm taking that off my plate.
and we're at least breaking even on those, right? The town's not.
Yeah, in general, like I say, if it's $50 straight out fee, and it's, let's just say it's $35 for an inspection, and I figured out the processing was around $3 for, yada yada, and I included it into the FICA and everything this year, which it didn't happen last year, because I didn't know how we were gonna pay. So, yes, it covers it. And we can adjust the fees if need be. There's a few glitches in the fee schedule right now where there are some jobs that take 2 inspections and $50 doesn't quite cover it. But there are other jobs that we get more than,
It balances.
yeah, so far it's balanced, but it's a glitch in the system that I gotta get fixed through Permit Pro with the fee on that particular item. But that's, the point was just to have it pay for itself.
This isn't in and out, so I'm gonna move the 81,291.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Budget passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kip.
Waiting for that release.
Same thing, nothing till the 21st.
All right, and we just have code
No,
enforcement.
no budget committee Monday.
Oh, really? Really?
Oh, I must not have made it all the way.
Everybody
to
wants to
make my
trick or treat.
announcement.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I thought that was code enforcement. BudCom, we have.
So we need budget committee.
Budget, we have left.
And they're level funded, so I'll make a motion for the $500 for budget thing.
Second.
Um,
I'm on the budget committee, so I probably shouldn't say.
Second.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
Not that-
You're abstaining?
No, I'll vote on it, I just don't want to second it.
Oh, okay. Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, BudCom passes. That was all the budgets we had
Yeah.
for tonight, right? Okay. Going on to notes, we have health insurance rates.
So the way the health insurance currently works under our policy is that we offer 3 different medical plans. So plans A, B, and C. The town pays 100% of the premium for a single and 75% of a couple or 2-person and a family plan for option B. That is a traditional HMO with no deductible. If employees want to elect option C, they get those same dollars attributed to that premium, and so they get more of their premium covered, but then they have a deductible of $1,000 per person, maxing at $3,000 per family. Option A is a higher premium plan, so they get fewer dollars attributed towards their premium. It has no deductible, but they have more options as far as their network. And so we have a couple of employees that elect to pay the higher premium to have a broader network there. If we were to so we're looking at a 11.7% increase for our current HMO plan.
Went down last year.
If we were to maintain status quo, our budget is going from 330 to 401, but that looks artificially inflated. So if you subtract out what we budgeted in our warrant article with firefighters, it really would only be 377, so 40,000 instead of the 70. I compared it with different plan options to see where we might be sitting, and with our current town makeup, it would be, if we moved to a higher deductible plan, if the town were to pay the premium, which goes between $500 to $1,500 for a family, the deductible is $3,000 for a single person and up to $9,000 for a family. If you were to elect that plan and cover the premium plus 50% of the deductible into an HRA account, the total dollars out based off of our current makeup of staff would be $381. So you would save about $20,000. My recommendation, since we are already on the lower side of the town contributing towards premiums for 2-person and for family plans, that you would maintain status quo. Most of our employees elect the traditional HMO plan. Only 5 of our current benefit-eligible employees elect one of the alternatives.
And Karen, if somebody picks the A option that has the higher premium, does the town pay the difference, or does the employee pay for the higher premium?
The employee pays for the higher premium.
Gotcha.
What's the deductibles on the Plan B?
Currently, there is no deductible for Plan B currently.
C.
So Plan
C has a
It's just a
deductible.
copay. Plan C is a
What's the
deductible.
copay?
Is 1,000 or 3,000. So it's 1,000 for a single person and then max is at 3 for a family.
And you said the rate went down last year,
The rate went down last year, and so if
so
you
this
look at a
looks higher
5-year
than you think, yeah.
If you look at the 5-year average, we're about 4% increase year over year, but because we had a decrease last year, and then it looks like a higher percentage increase this year.
I know insurance is going up
Yeah.
everywhere, no matter what you do.
Yeah, I don't think this is unique to us.
And our plan is 100% claims-based, so it's based off of all of the employees in the pool, you know, it's catch-up appointments from appointments that they didn't have while they
Is it
were on
just a
COVID.
Brentwood pool, or is it like a
No,
larger?
it's a pool through Health Trust, it's 50
Yeah, right,
employees or
okay, I remember
smaller.
that.
So they take all the towns our size and put them all in the
Put
same.
them together.
Gotcha, for like the risk stratification, or no?
So I'll make a motion that we keep our current insurance plan using 35,000 of ARPA to offset the $70,000 increase.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That carries.
It's actually 71,000, but. So we've spent, 100 and some odd thousand ARPA money.
Yeah, that's what it's for. All right, energy and efficiency conflict of interest statements. So it sounds like, Bob, I don't know if you wrote up this document that's in our packet, or where this came from?
It's kind of a hodgepodge, so there's reaching out to several sources to try to figure out how to word it.
Cut and
Okay.
paste.
Okay.
Cut and paste. It's good.
I was talking with Karen
And I sent it to
before.
Karen and said, help me
Yeah.
make this make sense.
Yeah. I was talking with Karen before our meeting because I had done a little research, and Karen, you said maybe 5 or 6 years ago
Yes.
this went to the town. So there's actually an RSA that controls conflict of interest ordinances for towns. It's RSA 31:39-A. So I went to Karen and said, hey Karen, do we have one of these? And she said, yep, we do. So apparently 5 or 6 years ago, it went before the town as a warrant for us to pass a conflict of interest ordinance, I believe it's called, that is currently in our books and on our policies. With this being in place, we do not need any sort of separate form, but Karen did point out that there is nothing currently that any of our elected or appointed officials sign that references this ordinance, and your suggestion was that we add it on to which document?
On the application form, so when they volunteer to sign, they put their statement of interest, they sign that they read the 91A policy, that they've read the conflict of interest and ethics policy, and that they agree and understand the terms and conditions, and then sign their application.
I would agree with that.
And that would
Everyone
have-
should be seeing.
And that would apply to everyone across the entire town, not to any particular
Yeah,
board.
so that should be on everything.
Yeah.
And we send out, there's usually, like that would be when people get sworn in, right? They would have to have that form.
Right, but I think it would be good practice for any newly elected officials to just say, here's your 2 policies, have them read through them, sign them, and sign the same documents as everybody else, even if they don't have.
Since we haven't
Application.
done that, since this was voted on, should we have everyone just across the board just come and sign a new form?
I think that would make sense.
Yeah,
I
or
don't think they
maybe,
have to come and sign.
or maybe
Or just
January
when you give
1st
them
or
out to-
Give them out to
something.
the department
Chair
heads.
people.
Yeah, have
chairs.
everybody sign them. And I believe it applies to appointed,
Yep.
elected and appointed and employed, right, all of the
Yep.
above.
Oh, it's
It's in the-
everybody.
It's
It's in the
everybody.
employee handbook, so all of the current employees have seen
Have
it and
signed
signed
the
it.
current handbook.
It's just
Because they
elected
sign that
and
every year,
officials.
don't they?
But elected and appointed people don't, so we just have to close that loophole, and then this is a done deal. And it has the boilerplate language about, you know, if you have, if you are going to vote on something that you have personal financial interest, that you need to voice
Recuse.
that before your chair and recuse. So we don't need a specific, nor do I think we should have a specific one for a specific
Fine by me if
committee.
we've already voted that RSA in,
Yep.
so.
And my understanding, this has already gone to those committee members, so we need to
Yep.
make sure they understand that they do not need to sign
Yep,
this.
and then I'll send them the other policy
Great.
instead and ask them to sign a separate form.
Perfect.
So the ones that have signed already,
Just
just to know those are destroyed.
throw it away.
Yes.
That's number one.
It's
Yeah.
void, right?
Number two is this process, obviously, you know, I'm interested to hear other input, but I don't know going forward that it's appropriate to have one of us draw up a document that is then finalized and sent out to members to sign when the board hasn't even seen the document. We could have caught this.
I was a little surprised. I don't know how the process happened.
Well, I know we had a discussion about it, and
Sure.
then I sent it over to Karen, and I think I CC'd it to Andy too, saying,
Wouldn't
here's
it
my
have-
thoughts. And then,
All right, so
Wouldn't it have needed to come before the whole board? to not be a unilateral, like a
Well, I know we
unilateral
discussed
board.
it, I don't know where it goes from there, but I did send it over to Karen saying, you might wanna have legal review this, I'm not sure how this works, but these are my thoughts, of
Okay,
what I
so-
was looking for.
Okay.
Did
But
you
I don't
hear
know
it?
about a warrant that was voted on, so.
Yeah, so fair enough, it was submitted with that, spirit, that it
But
would be
shouldn't have made it
reviewed,
to the
but
committee,
it shouldn't have made it
ideally.
to the committee, so we just wanna make sure, at least I would like to ask the rest of us to agree that going forward, we make sure that we, and again, I understand the intent.
Well, I don't think anything was, Bob just sent it to Karen, Karen just had I
It's
can't
been
speak for
signed.
Karen, but
Yeah.
I would assume she had the intent that we discussed it and that's what we wanted, so.
Well,
But it went out to the committee
but
prior to
it
that,
wasn't, it was sent from Bob to Karen,
to the committee.
and then it went to the committee. So that's all I'm saying. These things, I get, they happen, that's fine.
Well, and
I'm saying
I
going
wasn't
forward.
even aware that there was a warrant RSA, so.
I didn't know till I asked Karen.
And so
Luckily,
we-
Karen
if
always
we-
knows the answer.
If we've adopted that RSA, then
Yeah, it's a moot
I
point.
can't do anything about it because it's an RSA,
Yep.
and the town has adopted it 5 years ago, you said?
I wanna say,
Kind
well,
of-
maybe more than that, cause Phyllis was still town clerk when that happened,
Oh, Phyllis, yeah.
Well,
so.
We could
We
find out,
actually-
but it's in the book, we looked it
yeah,
up.
did that and the nepotism balls.
Oh, that's
So it was
right,
when you were
that's
around.
right.
I appreciate,
Nepotism's
I
in the
appreciate that we're trying to move things along with the energy committee too, by the way. Speaking of which, is there anything set yet, or is that coming, I'm jumping ahead of
No,
you.
I sent an email out to all of the members that were appointed.
Okay,
One member that was appointed as an alternate member has said that if they were to be an alternate, they do not want to serve.
okay, who was that?
Matt Lipinski.
Okay,
Okay,
so should we publish for interested alternates?
If you would like, we could do that.
Seems like that would probably make sense.
Yeah, because we still gotta make sure that the ones,
Be good to
have you
have
heard
on.
back from everybody that they want to serve or not?
I haven't heard back from everybody, I've only heard back from 2 of them on their schedule, so I
So we
sent
probably
an
should-
Oh, just on the schedule.
on their
Yep.
So you
schedule.
gotta wait to find out what happens, because you might,
But you don't know of any that have declined their appointment to the committee?
None of them have declined their
Okay,
appointment.
it's just they haven't set their schedule yet.
I
So
mean-
should we publish for like a 2-week period?
Oh, sorry, just real quick before we jump off the alternate situation. He should know that, I mean, we had said that if they meet and they decide that, a primary wants to be an alternate, then there could be a
Then they can
position.
swap
I mean, it feels like he should at least go to the first meeting
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
before he
yeah, that's up
bails
to him,
out.
yeah.
Because we don't know what the dynamics, I mean, you might have somebody comes in and goes, I can't meet this much,
Yeah.
so I want to be an alternate.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the planning board has that happen all the time, where people say, I can't do that, so.
So you're just waiting on people to get back to you on their schedule so you can put something on the calendar for a
Yes.
meeting. I hope they understand that.
Should we publish for an alternate, or should we wait and have you circle back?
We would wait until
To Matt.
a
Okay,
couple weeks.
perfect.
That's all I was gonna ask.
Perfect, sounds good.
I hope they understand that, the urgency, I mean, I would assume they understood since it was well, documented, the urgency level here. And we have Thanksgiving around the corner, all this, it'd be nice to get this launched, as quickly as possible.
Well, you got Thanksgiving and then you have the election.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of
then
a hard
There's
time of
2
year.
weeks right there, and then you got the Christmas is right around the corner too, so.
Yep.
And then New Year's, boom, now we're into.
So to the extent that they can get something on the books in November,
All right, last thing on our agenda is any committee updates from the board?
I just have a couple from economic development from last night. So we discussed the Plan New Hampshire stuff, that's kind of already been covered, I don't need to go back into that. An additional idea that came up and that I'm going to be pursuing for next year. I am going to be pursuing it because it has to do with finances with this board. We're gonna try to do a quarterly breakfast with Brentwood businesses in the area as kind of a listening session at first, but then also network building.
Kinda like a Chamber of Commerce type networking.
Yeah, that's smart.
It's an unstructured Chamber of Commerce at first, yeah, like specifically listening session. What do you need? What do you like about Brentwood? What, and then move on from that. So quarterly, and obviously we're talking coffee, donuts, not a huge.
And you might, between the brew and Heavenly
Probably get some
Cornets,
donations,
or
yeah.
even Lindy's, you can choose which one, where do we go for actually having it probably at the rec center and saying who's gonna donate to that.
So we were thinking doing it at the rec center, and then kind of just seeing where we go from there.
Well, and that makes sense, cause you wanna do stuff for the rec anyway, part of your economic development.
It all comes together.
I think it's a cool idea.
You can just ask Russ, cause he's been everywhere.
That's true, he knows all the people with the food.
Bob, just listen up.
We're also going to be looking at doing a similar, think more like more formal information session, but a biannual commercial mixed-use developer open house. Think more of the library as the venue to have discussions specific to the 125 corridor. We have some more serious discussions ongoing with regard to potentials for long-term, larger scale community-sized water systems, or potential for finding funding for that kind of thing, and is in terms of locations of water. We're looking into that. There's a grant process that is going to be really getting underway in Q1, Q2 with a application deadline of early Q2. And then we also have something that we should talk about. I don't even know how to get this started, but there is no signage. This is pointed out by the UNH students, by the way. We've talked about it before in the committee, but this was in the UNH students report as kind of a major glaring omission.
Did it drop or?
New one down.
Jeez.
Bad chair. Can we make a motion to get new chairs?
Can we put it in the budget?
Can we put that?
Okay, Russ is okay, everyone.
Are the
Put it
ARPA
to the top
funds,
of
can
the
we get new
list.
chairs?
Yeah, new chairs would be
That was on
awesome.
video too, so that's good. Okay,
These chairs are pretty ratty. Anyway.
okay, continue, John.
There is no signage for Brentwood on 101. Not our businesses, not, other than, hey, we're the Rockingham seat going
There's not like welcome to Brentwood?
there's welcome to Brentwood on 125,
Okay,
but on 101, there's no signage pointing people to Brentwood or to Brentwood businesses. There's the Rockingham seat going west, but there's no other mention of Brentwood on 101.
I don't know if those are paid advertisements, you'd have to check with DOT.
when
So-
there's like McDonald's, 1
Right.
mile, like that type of thing?
Yeah, cause they don't even have Goody Coles on there, but they have that Huntsman's.
Right.
barbecue,
So that's exactly
Oh,
it.
yeah, that's right.
So
Which I've never been on.
we'd like to gin up a little bit more awareness that, hey, we're here. And whether that is because it's paid advertising, and I think that there is a paid advertising component, but there's not even an availability of those signs right now. And so I just wanna see. what
Sort
we
of on
can-
your wish list of looking into?
I'd like us to have, bring it up with Wayne, hey, like, is this something that you know who to go to? I can go to Bill Campbell at the DOT, but there's gotta be a way to make that happen.
It's definitely a DOT.
It's definitely a DOT thing, but like who at DOT,
Is
and
there-
where's the money come from?
Is there anything that they've discussed about, marketing for like commercial spots in like different, like Manchester area or like the Boston markets in order to say, hey, bring it to New Hampshire or something like that, like commercial type stuff, you know what I mean?
New Hampshire specific or Brentwood specific?
To bring it to Brentwood, are you guys looking at like marketing aspects for getting those commercial entities to want to bring?
So I think good question in terms of like digital marketing or targeting a specific audience. I think it's bounced around a little bit in informal conversations. I just think that like we're not there yet in terms of particularly like who would manage that.
Right.
Who would set it up, who would do the execution. I think we're at a point now where we're like, okay, we've done the survey, we've had the UNH students, we know some very specific things that we're aiming for and we wanna work toward. We also wanna develop, you know, do these breakfasts and do these open houses with the commercial / mixed use developers. And we're gonna do an information session with the community, probably January. I'm thinking like 2024 is where, if we get some traction, then we can do a little bit more proactive outside of our area. Awareness.
Cool.
Thank you for the question.
So DOT has a signs and signals department.
You just text it to me.
I'm trying to copy the email for the supervisor, and I'll email it to you.
Okay, thank you very much. That was my update.
Russ, do you have anything?
You know, no, there's nothing new.
Okay.
This
Bob?
last week,
Concom, nothing, just kind of status quo.
Sean took
Okay.
up all the time.
Andy, anything?
Budget committee met last night, all our approved budgets have been approved by the budget committee. There was a question from the board about transferring to fiscal year instead of a yearly. So instead of January to December budget, you would do a July to June 30th budget.
Like school.
I forwarded the chairman the law on that in a discussion. So basically, there has to be a vote to change it, and then there has to be a vote to do an 18-month budget.
Why not April to April? That would actually line up with how we approve budgets by the legislative body.
Because that's the way all the meetings would change. You would have a meeting in June. Your town meeting would be in June, I believe, after that.
Oh, does the state set that up as like the alternative option is to do June, if you don't do January?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think I emailed Karen, the RSA, so if she wants, she can email it to everybody.
Gotcha. But you'd have to do an 18-month bridge budget the first time
And then you'd be doing a town meeting in June.
in the summer.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I mean, our school board rep is right, yeah, that's a problem.
Because all the school, no matter what happens, is the SAU is always gonna be around the same time we do our town meeting.
What
So it would
problems?
be, because the SAU already runs on a July to June budget, so it would just equalize the town to the SAU budget.
Yeah,
So
but
that would
a
be-
town
Town
meeting in
meeting.
June would not be cool.
So they
because
still
you'll
would have
people-
theirs in March and we would have ours in June.
But you have summer vacations.
What would be the other benefits? Like, what did BudCom think were the other benefits other than
That
lighting
was the
up?
only question, was can we do something other than working on a wing and a prayer for 3 months?
Right.
I just,
What about switching, the possibility of switching the, our SB2 situation?
Still wing and a prayer for 3 months. You know what your default is, but you still start in January and
SB two still goes through in March, right?
Yeah, it's just by ballot vote instead of traditional town meeting.
Maybe we need to look at the RSA and see the details of what the options are.
I'll upload that document onto the drive so that you guys can all view it.
Do we know if any other towns have done that and moved their budget cycle?
I know the county just did, but
Okay,
they're voted on by delegation.
right.
I think Chester at one point did, but I think they may be back to a traditional March to, the article from New Hampshire Municipals, I think, says that there's so many, like 13 towns in the state to do it or something like that.
Okay, so not many.
I mean, my thought is if it was that great.
There'd have to be
deal,
some
they
big
probably would've Had a
pros.
huge bunch of people doing it
Yeah.
already, you know?
Yeah, there'd have to be some major pros to weigh out against some of the cons, I think. And the fact that we approve a budget in March, traditionally, I'm assuming, the only time it could be an issue is if something gets, let's say, zeroed out at town meeting, right? And you've already been paying it January, February, March?
Because we're on a municipal budget committee, the town can only change the budget 5% of what is
Right.
approved. So The most that can happen is the town can cut 5% from whatever,
And then you just have to
Then you have
make
to
do with that for the
find
9
money.
months of the year. So that's really the only monetary damage that can happen to the town by having those 3 kind of floating months.
And we always have that contingency, so.
Right.
and we don't,
Right.
we don't adjust payroll, which is a majority of the, and we ask.
Just to make sure you don't put your foot in it.
Right, and we ask the departments not to do any major spending either.
Right. So have we ever, in recent times,
Don't
had a
tell.
major problem?
No,
Hey, I don't believe in that stuff, you know,
The
like,
only towns that had a problem was in 20, when COVID happened, 21, in 20, when COVID happened.
Where they postpone.
Towns that didn't have their traditional town meeting on that March date, those that chose to postpone, they were stuck in that
oh,
world
right.
of status quo until they ended up having their vote.
Which is much harder if you've gone 6 months into your
Right.
budget and then something goes awry.
Right.
But we wouldn't anticipate that happening.
And we were actually pretty good, because we got lucky, because we had the meeting.
We powered through.
Okay,
And then the world shut down on Monday.
Yeah, yeah, we
Right.
got really lucky
Okay.
on ours.
so at this point, I'm not hearing a lot of support on the board for making that change, but we can certainly kind of look into it a little bit more. Okay, great. Anything else from BudCon?
Nope.
Okay, I don't have anything major from school. Any other board business before we go to public comment? No? Okay, any public comment from the audience?
She's a nut, no.
Liddy?
Lenny Bedard speaking on behalf of myself and not on any other board I'm on. I also looked it up after the budget committee meeting last night. You can move the annual meeting to May, but you can keep it in March if you want to. So you don't have to move it, because that is what the school does.
So you could have your meeting in March, but your budget year wouldn't start till June,
Yes, or July 1st.
July 1st.
so you're still operating on a wing and a prayer.
No,
Oh, no, because it's,
because it's.
You're on
after
last year's
the-
budget.
My personal opinion is the reason not a lot of people have done it is because you have to do the 18-month budget to convert that,
Sure.
which probably is not fun.
Probably, asterisk,
Probably is.
probably not fun. Thank you for
I
clarifying.
can see that being a financial
That'd be
nightmare.
a
Plus,
lot
that
of-
also might hurt the employees, because you're not gonna be given the raise, you gotta do 18 months.
Well, and everything would be an estimate based off
Yeah.
of different contracts expiring, health insurance would be an estimate.
Oh, everything would be.
But how can you even do that, do an 18-month budget
With numbers you don't even know yet.
you're basically forcing a different select board.
Oh, right, you're,
I mean, I'm sure it's,
The RSA provides.
I'm sure you can.
There's
It's just-
probably some way you massage it or something.
it's interesting, there's only 13 towns that have done it. How many
Yeah.
towns do we have?
Like 100 and, yeah,
2006.
a lot, a lot more than 13. So we'll continue to look into that. John?
Thank you for keeping the budget committee's budget level. and improving
Jeff, can
that.
you say your name?
But I am having a problem with
He's like, no.
Jack
Jack Mitchell.
We'll do it for him.
Sherman Avenue.
There you go. Thank you, Jack.
But I am having trouble spending it because our secretary refuses to accept her payment. She figures it's her civic duty to do what she does, which she does very well. So, but more importantly, you were discussing earlier pay rates and bonus situations. I don't know if you feel good about your department heads, why not leave the bonus portion to the department heads? Raise everybody according to the COLA, but let the department heads decide who among their employees would get more or less of the, I'm not asking you to undo
I
anything.
think that's what we did decide.
yes.
You just gave an excellent summary of what we voted on.
Okay.
Thank you
Well done.
for reaffirming that.
And I can tell you, the health officer budget, I haven't accepted $1 in 9 years, so. And I think my budget is
But
about,
you were appropriated a dollar.
Right,
and I never take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to. I think it's actually violates RSA to volunteer if you get paid by the town for something else. You have to technically have a pay. Any other public comment?
Bob had just mentioned, or asked.
Doug Finnan.
Doug Finnan, go
Doug
over.
No.
It's gross that I know where
Bob had
everybody
mentioned
lives.
about the economic committee and one thing, you may have mentioned it, but I didn't hear it. We did talk about soliciting via mail actively, initially on the breakfast and those type of things. So we are reaching out to other businesses as well. So there is a cost involved with that, you know.
Mail cost, good.
I didn't put up a budget yet, but
No,
I hope,
just as a
I
reminder.
hope you'll be here when I do.
Yeah, come back that day. Any other public comment?
Breakfast certificates.
I was thinking that breakfast activities, but I was like, how do we spin it with
Thank you, everyone.
breakfast with Johnny?
We have no non-public,
Here's Johnny.
there's no non-public tonight.
Really?
Woo, so I'll
Alright,
take a
motion to
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay,
like,
we're out of
hurry,
here.
rushing things
7:41. Woo-woo.
Wow. That's a quick meeting.
So when you leave public comment to the end.
Let's do
Run,
that.
run, run, run.
That would be my suggestion.
Do these line up with your ABC?
Kelly,
This looks